We will dive deeper into our Sunday teaching and share practical next steps for your faith journey. Now, let's kick off the extra point.
Hey, welcome to the Extra Point. I'm Cheryl Ross, the Next Steps in Discipleship pastor here at Southridge Church, and I'm with Scott Beha, our lead pastor. And we want to make sure that if you have not liked or subscribed to this podcast, that you go ahead and do that right now. That way you don't miss out on any new content. This past Sunday, we finished up our Red Letters series, and Pastor Scott, you shared with us a message about basically what it takes, what you need to do when you're not where you want to be. Yeah. You shared a message from Revelation, chapter 2, and I think that it really hit home with a lot of people. But you shared it with us a little bit about how when we're trying to prepare for the teachings for everybody, that often God uses those things that we personally are struggling with. Yeah. To allow us to teach others those things, what God is teaching us through those struggles. And a lot of pastors are very hesitant to do that kind of thing, to share. But why is it so important for you and for us here at Southridge Church to really kind of lead the way in that and go ahead and share those struggles with people?
Well, I got a message right after church yesterday, and they said, this is the exact reason why we feel comfortable at this church and not in other churches that we've gone to.
Yeah.
And that for me has been the reason why because my own personal issues growing up, and again, I went to a fantastic church growing up. I don't think I've always done a good job of explaining that. I went to a fantastic church growing up. It was my own issues, not the church's issues necessarily. Yeah. I'm sure there was stuff wrong there, but that's not the reason. I had this view of pastors and Christians in general that they never did anything wrong, and because I don't know, I don't even know where I came up with that, because I'm certain that that's not what it was. But I do know that seminary trained pastors are often told to not lead with vulnerability, even though that's like a big buzzword in our culture now. We're taught, hey, don't say anything that will minimize your credibility with your congregation.
Right.
And I go, well, with when you look around the church landscape, the amount of pastors that are being removed from ministry because of these different failures and things that they're having, it's because when things were not good, they didn't have a place to go and say it. They couldn't be real upfront and honest with their congregations. They had to just hide it. And then when you hide stuff, it grows, it gets worse, and ultimately you end up spiraling out of control because you feel trapped in that situation. Yeah. And because I thought pastors, and this is funny because I had encounters with people in our movement early on that made me think this as well. Yeah. That like, no, these people that are pastors, they don't have these issues. They don't do these things. They don't have these struggles. And the more I even get around people from our movement, they go, this is not what we teach whatsoever. Yes, we're part of the Wesleyan holiness movement, and we do believe that people should be holy. And I'm not saying that the scriptures don't make it clear that even pastors should try to attain to a different level than even the people that they're pastoring. But again, that does not mean that those people that are speaking those messages week in and week out have it all together.
Right.
And I think it helps people in their own faith journey not to give up, because that's what happened to me. Is I ended up giving up early on the church when I realized, like, no, there's a standard here, and I don't ever reach it, so I gave up. Whereas helping people understand there's a standard, absolutely. I am all for the holiness of God and the holiness of His people. There is a standard. But the truth is, none of us meet it.
Right.
And that has to be the same thing. But that also can't be your excuse for just throwing your hands up and going, it doesn't really matter what I do either. Because there would be something wrong in that as well. I think that's, for me, why I go, listen, you guys have to understand that when God is asking me to teach something, a lot of times it's something that He's teaching me or dealing with me about. And this has just been this has been where I've been at. I'm trying to trace it back, really, as I just kind of pray, and the more people I open up and talk to, about it. I can't figure out when it all happened, to be honest, because, again, it's like that illustration I used. Like, it's like when you're at the beach. You just are slowly drifting down the beach, and you don't really notice it. And then you go, and I can't really pinpoint when or how it happened.
Yeah.
And you also go, like, how I don't fully know, and this is where the beach illustration breaks down. I don't fully know even how to get back.
Right.
And I think that's what's been most difficult in this season. And it's weird too, because like in this season, like I think for some reason, like my preaching has been better in the last like 2 years, even in the midst of this kind of numbness or whatever it is that I'm dealing with personally. Like there's been a sense in which the preaching has been something at a different level than even what it was, even in this. And some of that, I talked about it yesterday, is like when you're really, really clear on what God's asked you to do in life, like I am, that is one thing I know without a shadow of a doubt. God's asked me to pastor this church. And when you're really, really, really clear about what you're supposed to do, then even when you don't feel like it, even when you don't want to, even when you wish it was different, even when you, like, whatever it is, you can still wake up every day and go do it.
Yeah.
And be faithful even under duress. And that's what the people in Ephesians 2, or in the church of Ephesus in Revelation 2, that's what they were doing. They were just continuing to be faithful despite, all this stuff coming against them. And sometimes, again, this is a season. Sometimes that's just the season you're in. You just go and you do what God's asked you to do, whether you want to, whether you feel like it, whether it brings you a whole bunch of joy in that season. Because truth be told, your calling is a whole lot more important than whether or not you're actually like just beaming with happiness all the time.
Right.
It just is.
Yeah.
And I think in the long run, I think I'll look back 5-10 years down the road and go, that really tough season that you were in, you may not ever know why you were in it, but you can see how God redeemed it to do something in you during that season that you can't see when you're in the midst of it. You can only see when you look back.
Right.
And I anticipate that's probably what's going on.
Yeah. Well, I think like when you think about plants and things like that, there's a lot of growth that happens before you see it on the surface. And I think that's what tends to happen and how he redeems it with us in those seasons, is that it's a season, but it may not be our harvest, right? And so like we're going through this and there's a struggle, like any growth, there's a struggle and there's those things, but then one day, like it is going to be a little bit clearer. But I do think that idea of drifting is really important to try to trace and remember. Like Christine Kane wrote a book that dealt with this a lot called How Did I Get Here? And it's like this, it's the same concept of how like all of a sudden you can look up and you're like, how did I get to this place? Yeah. And you have to trace those things back. I mean, I know I've been in those seasons before too, where it felt like I'm just drifting. I'm just like going along, but then I look up and I'm like, what? And so I read through that book around the time that my kids and I went to the beach the last time. And so like we taught them like, hey, remember, like I showed them what our hotel looked like, where we were staying and all of that, to make sure that every so often they would look up and see where they were in comparison to where they were supposed to be, so that they could come back. Because as you're just out there playing in the waves and doing the things that you're doing there at the beach, you don't notice how far that can take you. And I think it's the same thing with our spiritual walk. We're doing the things, we're paying attention, but we forget to do those steps that you talked about, that like remember that aspect, like remember to look up, remember to look back at like where you're supposed to be or what you're supposed to be doing. That is really important in our journey, to continually do that along the way.
I imagine there's a lot, and I don't even have to imagine. I talked to a lot of people Sunday. They were like, yeah, I get what's going on. Like for us personally, like we went as a church through a 3-year COVID crisis. Yeah. Which for people that were not on church staffs or on church boards during that time, it absolutely decimated the church in a morale sense. Like, and for all the pastors that had to lead through it, most of us are still not okay as the result of just that season. And for us, it got even more difficult when the first year that we thought was going to be a normal year for us we sprung a leak in one of our areas in our church, and half of our building was out of commission, which again affected us, and then that led to a gigantic financial crisis last August. So it was just like one after another. Key members of our church decide to move on to go to different places during that season. All of that begins to compound, and eventually you just kind of get to that point where, like, and I've shared all those struggles with everybody. Like, I've been telling people lately, I said, this is the weirdest phenomenon that I've ever experienced in my life, but I guess it makes sense, is for some reason over the last, like, 6 months to a year, I have been dealing with, like, a crippling abandonment fear of abandonment. And I go, it's so silly because my parents are both still married. They're still in my life. No one ever left me. Yeah. Like, I don't have friends that just up and left me and turned their back on me. I don't have anything like that whatsoever anywhere in my history. And yet, like, I have, like, this crippling fear right now of abandonment. And, like, I was talking to a room full of pastors a couple of weeks ago about it, and it was like, I think that's just what happens because church members come and go, and maybe that's what's causing it. And it's just like the weirdest thing in the world to deal with abandonment issues when no one's ever abandoned you outside of, like, someone deciding that they're moving away or going to a different church. Or it's very weird. So, like, it's all this compounding stuff that's happened over, like, the last 4 or 5 years. I'm sure in everybody's own lives that they've been experiencing this, because even though we try to, like, act, oh yeah, COVID's over, yeah, but the effects of that are going to be going on. Like, we're still seeing developmental issues in kids and things as a result of it. The effects of what took place from 2020 to 2023 is going to be lingering in our culture and our society for decades. And I'm guessing maybe that's what started the ball rolling, and then all these other things hit. And after a while, you're like trying to figure out, man, how do I get back to 2019 where, like, I was in better physical shape, better mental shape, better spiritual shape? Like, how in the world do we get back there given all that has happened? And I think that's why God, this is, I think, the third or the fourth time I've preached this passage since I've been a preaching pastor. And it's almost the same exact sermon every time, because I think that those three things, to remember where we came from, remember what it was like when things were hitting on all cylinders, when you did feel it, when when you felt like you were right where you wanted to be in your relationship with the Lord and all these different things. And then you do have to repent, because even though there's been a lot of circumstances out of my control, and if this is your story outside of your control, you're still at the end of the day responsible for whether or not you made steps to stay close to your Heavenly Father. Like, that's just, you can blame it on, like, you can be the type of person that blames your situation on all the circumstances that were outside of your control, but the result stays the same. You're not where you should be. So you need to repent of that. And then that last R, the repeat, like, go back and do the stuff. Like this morning, I know my, like, keystone habit in life is when I go to the gym, everything else in my life is better. I'm a better husband. I'm a better father. I'm a better leader. Like, I go to the gym this morning. I spent an hour with my gym partner, and next thing I know, I'm listening to a leadership book on the way back to my house, which normally, like right now, in the season I've been in, I've been trying to listen to this book. I would have probably read it in about 3 days. 5 years ago. I've been on it for like 3 months, and I still have 5 hours to go. Like, I've been, even my reading habits have changed like that. I would listen to leadership and church podcasts and sermons and stuff all day long. I can't even sit through one. Right now. So I listen to, like, sports commentary, crap that doesn't even matter, but that's just where like, and so if I remember, like this morning, went to the gym, listened to the leadership book, get here, Bible time, prayer time, all these, like, non-negotiables, these things that I know that when I do these things, I start getting to where I want to be as a pastor, as a husband, as a father, and all that. But when one of those things slacks, I end up missing all of them, and then I end up feeling so disconnected. And so that's what you got to repeat the stuff that
Yeah.
got you to where you were before you started moving in the opposite direction. And
Yeah.
the reason why the sermon keeps coming up is if you can do those three things, if you can remember, you can repent, and you can repeat, then you always know the way back to where you need to be.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's important to remember that too, because it's really easy, and this is what kind of like the church was dealing with and what we are dealing with. It's really easy in our busyness, in our good deeds, in our things that we're doing, like to play it off as though that's enough. And we, like Aaliyah and Pastor Jess and I talked about this a little bit, like that, especially I feel like as a pastor, we do a lot of Bible study and things to prepare for the weekends. And often that can feel like we're doing the things that we need to do, but it's still not it's not personal. It's not that it's still in doing those things that we're doing that. Like it's in the doing for him rather than being with him. And so it's really easy to confuse that busyness and those good things that we're doing as being what we're supposed to do, and realize and forget this idea that like labor cannot ever be a substitute for love. Like that we have to realize that those things like that, there's a separation of, okay, so for my spouse, like with Anthony, I could do a lot of things for him, but if I don't take time to actually date him, like spend time one-on-one with him and those things, that relationship's going to suffer. It's the same thing, is that often we get so busy in that doing and we feel like that is part of being with, but it's not. It's definitely completely different. And so remembering in those moments that when we get there to realize, okay, what have I maybe been using as that like excuse or that substitute for really loving God or being with God? What am I substituting out in those places?
Yeah. And I wanted to say this Sunday, and I kind of missed it. This is the type of sermon that some people will listen to it, and they're going to feel tension around, like they are so involved here at the church, and they go, the church needs me, the church needs me. There are some people here that you need to serve less, and you need to spend more time being a Christian. There are other people here, you need to serve a whole lot more because you ain't doing nothing.
Right.
And and so, like, you got to make sure you if you heard that message Sunday, because what always happens is the wrong people get the wrong message.
Like they think they need to step back when really they don't need to.
Exactly. Yeah, like there will be people that are not serving in our church right now.
And be like, that's why I don't serve.
That's why I don't serve. I'm here to focus on my relationship. No, listen. You should be serving at your local church, period. No ifs, ands, or buts. We're up here all week long. If you can't do Sundays, there's stuff you can do throughout the week. There's plenty of people that do it. There's ways to get involved.
Yeah.
You should be serving at your local church. There is no discussion to be had about that. But inevitably, there will be someone that's like already serving in 4 ministries, and they'll go, I could probably do a 5th ministry. I could probably help. But it's like, no. You are not the target audience for that message.
Right.
You may, if you're serving in 4 different ministries here, you are that person that you need to take a step back and focus on 1 or 2 things and focus on, just being a congregant and a Christian or whatever it is. Like, so there's inevitably somebody that does not do anything around here will hear that message yesterday and go, oh, well, see, that's what I was trying to guard against. Is I didn't want to be too busy. Yeah. It's like, I mean, come on. And it's not even just like church stuff either. Like this is one of those things. Like I am in a season right now where I'm going to have to find some off ramps for the good stuff I'm doing, even in my community outside of church. Like there's just no way to be involved in as many things as what I have previously been involved in to stay really effective and sharp in other areas. And so there may be even good stuff that people are doing that they just need to go, you know what, maybe I'll let someone else do that, fill that role, whatever it might be. And you don't have to say yes to every opportunity that comes your way either. So inevitably, though, somebody will hear the wrong thing in that message, and somebody will be challenged to do more when they should do less, and somebody will choose to do less when they should do more.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's wisdom and discernment to know that. And I think even as like leaders, church leaders, lay leaders, it's important to remember when we need to say no for somebody. Even like when we have a person that says that, like and for those people to be understanding and open to realize that, oh, this may not, like they may be right. Like they're not telling me no because I'm not good enough or qualified or whatever. They're telling me no for me, so that way I can actually grow deeper in this area. Because I think when we spread ourselves out too wide, it limits our capacity to go deep in certain areas. And that's where like we try to develop leadership teams within the different ministries and those kind of things, because that allows somebody who wants to do more, but in one specific area where they can have more impact and remembering those kind of things. But I know that that can be hard to do when you feel that need, you see the need and you want to help in those areas, but it takes a lot of wisdom and discernment. And I think knowing your calling, because I think when we do know, okay, these are how the Spirit has gifted me. These are the gifts from the Spirit that I have, are to teach, are to evangelize, are to like in hospitality, like to know what those are and then be able to say, okay, this is where I can make the most impact. I think knowing your calling, knowing how you're gifted and what your passions are and those types of things helps you to know what to say yes to, what to say no to, and how to really, because I think there is a different level of, even though you're exhausted, when you're doing some of the things you know you're supposed to be doing, it can help fill that cup back up in those moments. And that helps you with that endurance, that ability to even though I feel this way here, I know I'm doing what I'm doing. So I'm filling myself up here by doing this, but then I'm also, making sure that I'm doing the other things, that remember, repent, and repeat aspect to keep me grounded where I'm supposed to be. And so I think remembering those things. Anything else that you want to add?
No, I think that's pretty much everything. So if that's, cool. And honestly, where I think maybe the final thing I will say, if this sermon resonated with you and you feel like it's at a level that you can't handle on your own, you need to go and find someone. And that's also what I'm doing. I've been a big fan of counseling for a long time, but I realize my current counseling situation I don't think is what I need for this season. So I'm actually seeking out someone new that can kind of handle this season of where I'm at. Because I think it's bigger than what I used to go to counseling for. And so some of you're hearing this and you go, I don't think that just more time in the Word is going to fix this. I need to talk to somebody. Then you need to find that person that you can go, and again, be your realest self with. Go like, look, listen, this is what's going on. This is how I feel. This is what I've been doing. This is what I've been struggling with. This is what I haven't been doing, whatever it is. If you have to find that person, even if you have to go out and pay to find that person, you just have to do it.
It's definitely worth it. I think that's incredibly important to think about, that like also if it resonated with you, maybe have a conversation with another wise Christian, another person that maybe can give you some of that outside advice to help you to know what your next steps are, because this is a very personal thing. And I think those people who've heard it and either think one thing or other, I would pray about it and I'd have a conversation with whoever. Like if you are serving in an area and you're feeling that exhaustion and you know that you're thinking that maybe you should step back, have a conversation with that ministry leader. To talk about it, so that way they know and can understand and can care for you in the process. Like, because I think sometimes we maybe step back and then we never step back in. Like we just stay out for too long and never know like when it's time to step back in. And so I think, having the people to know what's going on so they can check back in with you so we can see where you're at, so we can help, manage along the way. But I think regardless of what you're feeling, finding somebody to talk to about it and discuss it and spending that time in prayer too is incredibly important to do that. But next week we're going to be starting a new series called Rise and Fall. It'll be from 1st and 2nd Samuel. We'll be in this series for quite a while, so we hope that you'll be right back here with us next week, so that way we can give you more practical next steps for your faith journey.
Thanks for tuning in to The Extra Point. Be sure to subscribe to the Southridge Church podcast and tune in every Wednesday for another episode of The Extra Point.